The female roles now have a lot more depth. It's more than just running around on Bond's arm. Christmas is strong, intelligent, and sassy, and there's an infectious one-upmanship and clever banter between her and James Bond.
The World Is Not Enough occupies an uncomfortable place within the James Bond fandom. Loathed by some, a guilty pleasure for others, it has a particular duality that is best represented by its two leading ladies, Sophie Marceau as Elektra King and Denise Richards as Christmas Jones. Elektra King is notable for being the first primary female antagonist in a James Bond movie, breaking with the 37-year expectation of the James Bond formula.
A woman?
Your powers of observation do you credit, Mr. Bond.
Elektra King is crafted as self-assured.
Send the pipe around.
It's going to take weeks and cost millions. Your father approved this route.
Then my father was wrong. Do it.
Brave.
What are you doing here?
The same thing you are. Looking for the people who tried to kill me.
And ultimately Machiavellian in her pursuit to dominate the global oil business.
It is my oil. Mine.
Screenwriters Neil Purvis and Robert Wade craft Elektra King with complexity, and she remains a favourite within the James Bond fanbase.
You wouldn't kill me. You'd miss me.
Which is ironic when you turn to the other primary female character of this film, Christmas Jones, as portrayed by Denise Richards. Christmas Jones, the American nuclear scientist, is frequently cited as being one of, if not the worst, Bond girls within the franchise. Much of the criticism unfairly focuses on Denise Richards' appearance, her character's pun-believable name, and the film's clumsy attempt to converge the sensibilities of late 90s movies and video games. None of this, however, offers anything constructive that an aspiring writer or filmmaker could learn from. Instead, in this essay, I want to look at the character within context and highlight the reason why, I believe, the character of Christmas Jones works against the narrative of The World Is Not Enough. To understand the flaws in the characterization of Christmas Jones, we first need to clarify what we mean when we are discussing a character's objective. Taking the definition of objective from Bella Merlin's book, The Complete Stanislavski Toolkit, she defines an objective as:
an objective is both psychological and physical. It's psychological in that it sums up something without which the character cannot exist, their emotional drive, the need within their character. And it's physical in that the character is compelled to execute a series of actions in order to try and obtain whatever the objective might be.
To see this set up successfully, let's examine a scene in which our protagonist, James Bond, has his objective delivered to him. First, we are introduced to the film's secondary antagonist in stunning 3D CGI.
Victor Zokas, a.k.a.
Renard, the anarchist.
After Robert came to me, I sent 009 to kill Renard. He put a bullet in his head.
After which, Judi Dench provides Bond with his motivation, which propels us into the second act.
Find who switched that pin. If your instincts are right, Renard will be back. And Elektra will be the next target.
The implication is clear. Find Renard and...
put a bullet in his head.
And when Judi Dench tells you to do something, you do it. So Bond's objective is clear. Now let us examine Christmas Jones. We first meet Christmas Jones after Bond has succeeded in infiltrating a nuclear facility, from which Renard is planning to steal a nuclear warhead. This scene puts her and Bond in direct conflict and confrontation.
Are you here for a reason? Or are you just hoping for a glimmer?
Don't I get some kind of protection?
No, Dr. Arkoff. Down there, it's all weapons-grade plutonium, reasonably safe. Up here, we've got hydrogen bombs that your lab built leaking tritium, which I've spent the last 6 months trying to clean up. So if you need any protection at all, it's from me.
By the way, Zlobruskova, we очень хорошо говорите по-английски.
Я учился в Оксфорде.
We exit this scene knowing very little about Christmas Jones, least of all what her objective might be for the remainder of the film. All we know is that she is a scientist, American, and sassy. And ironically, this seems to be the only thing that Neil Purvis and Robert Wade also knew about her character.
Because originally she was going to be kind of French. But when we had a French actress playing the other girl, we thought, well, we can't have a French woman playing. So she became American, and that meant that the script was rewritten to make her more sassy, basically. And
it said American in brackets when she spoke.
Bond leaves Christmas Jones, and we enter into a sequence in which Bond and Renard come into conflict for the first time. This scene is crucial. Unlike other films in the franchise, Bond does not need to extract information from Renard, neither has he been tasked to bring Renard in for questioning. No, Bond's objective is to execute Renard, and Bond is moments away from achieving this. The conflict has risen to a climax, and then...
He's an imposter! Dr. Arkoff is 63 years old!
Christmas Jones interrupts the scene, and Bond loses his advantage, thwarted from achieving his goal, his objective. If we take this short sequence as a microcosm, the antagonist to Bond, our protagonist, is not actually Renard, it's Christmas Jones. She is the one who has broken Bond's cover. She is the one who has brought the military down into the nuclear test chamber. She is the obstacle that stands in between Bond and his objective. Bear in mind that, now that the midpoint has clued Bond into Elektra King's duplicity, Christmas Jones is intended to play the role of secondary protagonist. By definition, we would expect our protagonists to have compatible goals or objectives. Or if they don't, their opposing viewpoints will be explored, creating an engaging argument at the centre of the film. However, The World Is Not Enough does not devote time to this. As a result, the audience cannot help but become frustrated with Christmas Jones. She is the reason that Renard is spared, and that Bond needs to begin his search anew. To make matters worse, the conflict is never explored in a meaningful way. A stronger film could have explored Christmas Jones's objection to Renard's execution, rooted in her sense of morality, creating dynamic character conflict with Bond's own morality. But instead, Christmas Jones resignedly takes up the mantle of Bond's tag-along, with an explanation only being handed to the audience around 10 minutes later. This motif of conflicting objectives is woven throughout the movie. We see it again.
There's still enough explosive in there to kill both of us if the trigger charge goes off.
Let it blow!
But I can stop
Let it blow!
And again.
What's your story? What are you doing here in Kazakhstan?
Avoiding those kind of questions.
And again.
But the world's greatest terrorist running around with 6 kilos of weapons-grade plutonium can't be good. I have to get it back, or somebody's gonna have my ass.
First things first.
So that we are left with no investment in her character, her goals, or her desires. They're clearly not necessary to the plot, and, if they are relevant, our protagonist's goals supersede them anyway. So the question is, what can we learn from this? In approaching your script, your novel, your story, whatever it be, clarify your character's objectives. If you can, write them out in their simplest form, and make sure that everything they do is in service of this goal. Then make sure they are clear to the audience. This will leave your characters feeling like real agents in your story world, rather than characters who are just reacting to the world around them or tagging along for unexplained reasons. Consider, if your characters are supposed to be harmonious, are they working towards a compatible goal? Or do you find yourself having to trade off one character's goal in service of another's? If, by nature of your narrative, your characters are in continual conflict, what ideas or themes are you exploring with this conflict? Once again, is this conflict clear to your audience? Or are you accidentally crafting a character who your audience is slowly growing to dislike because they are hindering the protagonist's main objective, and therefore the progression of the narrative? Because even if your character is strong, intelligent, and sassy, and there's an infectious one-upmanship and clever banter between them and your protagonist, if their objective is unclear, then your audience will walk away from your story confused and ultimately unsatisfied.